The jungle was quiet, too quiet for a place usually filled with buzzing bugs and chirping creatures. Jack, a human explorer, was walking slowly through the thick green leaves. His boots sinking in the soft ground. He had come to this planet to study its animals, not to fight or interfere, just to observe. But that evening, something felt wrong. The air was heavy, and the trees swayed even though there was no wind. Jack had his scanner in one hand and a flashlight in the other, eyes scanning the shadows between the branches. Suddenly, he heard a soft crack, like a twig snapping underfoot. He turned fast, muscles tense. But what stepped out of the trees made him freeze. It was a tiny alien girl, barely up to his chest. And she was covered in blood. Her breathing was fast, shallow, like she had been running for a long time. Her skin was a soft green with strange patterns drawn on it in dark paint. She wore a small leather armor, torn at the shoulder, and held a broken spear in one hand. Her eyes locked on Jack, glowing slightly in the dim light, full of fear, pain, and desperation. He took a step back, unsure if she was dangerous. But then she stumbled, dropped the spear, and grabbed his arm with both hands. "Please," she said in broken English, her voice trembling. "I need your strength." Jack blinked, confused. "Strength?" he asked, looking around. "What happened to you?" She looked over her shoulder quickly, like something was following her. Then she dropped to her knees and spoke again, more urgently. "Big one, fast." "Took them all," she said. "Only I escape." Jack crouched beside her, trying to understand. "Who took who?" he asked. She pointed back into the dark jungle. "Beast. It hunts." "Not normal." Then she touched her chest. "My name." Lyra. Jack looked at the scratches on her arms, the blood trailing down her side. It wasn't all hers. Something else had bled near her, something large, before he could say more. A low growl echoed through the trees. It was deep, full of hunger, and close. Lyra's eyes widened, and she grabbed his shirt, whispering, "It followed me." Jack stood up quickly and pulled her behind him, shining his flashlight toward the sound, but all he saw was shadows, moving, watching, waiting. He had no weapon, only a small survival knife and some emergency supplies, but the look in Lyra's eyes. It wasn't just fear, it was hope. She believed he could help. Jack had never fought a wild animal this big, especially not on a strange alien planet. But he couldn't leave her here. Bleeding and shaking in the dirt, he took a deep breath and nodded. "All right," he said. "Lead the way." She looked up at him, surprised, then nodded quickly and stood. Still leaning on him, they started walking back into the trees, her small hand gripping his wrist. The growl came again, but further now, like the beast was circling. Jack didn't know what he was walking into. But one thing was clear. This was no normal hunt. The jungle had gone silent. Not even the insects dared to make a sound as they walked deeper. Lyra began to whisper words in her own language. Maybe a prayer, maybe a chant. Jack didn't ask. He just kept walking, ready for whatever was waiting ahead. Something told him this was only the beginning, and the worst was yet to come. The jungle path was narrow and full of strange glowing plants. Jack walked behind Lyra, supporting her when she stumbled. Her small body moved quickly despite her wounds, as if fear pushed her forward. Branches scratched at Jack's arms, and he could feel the eyes of hidden creatures watching them from the dark. They walked for nearly an hour, deeper into a place no human had ever been. Then, without warning, Lyra stopped and pointed at the thick vines ahead. She made a soft sound, a whistle, and the vines shifted. Hidden behind them was a narrow tunnel made of living roots. Jack hesitated, but Lyra tugged his hand. "We close," she said, breathing hard. "My people?" They stepped into the tunnel, and the world changed. The jungle noise faded, replaced by soft chanting and the crackling of fire. They emerged into a hidden village built into the trees and cliffs. Huts made of leaves and bones sat in a circle. Fires burned low, and alien eyes turned toward them. Dozens of small figures rose from sitting positions, all with similar markings as Lyra. But the moment they saw Jack, the human, their eyes widened in terror. One alien woman screamed and grabbed her child, pulling her back. Another shouted something in their language. And suddenly, spears were aimed at Jack. He raised his hands, taking a step back. Lyra stood in front of him and raised her arm, shouting. In her tongue, the crowd paused, confused but still angry. One old alien stepped forward. Thin, his eyes dark and wise, holding a staff made of polished bone. He looked at Jack, then at Lyra, then back at Jack again. He spoke softly, and Jack couldn't understand the words. But the way he looked at Jack, it was like staring at something dangerous. Jack could feel their fear, like he was a monster. In their eyes, Lyra dropped to one knee and placed her hand on her chest. Speaking quickly, almost pleading, her voice cracked at one point, and she looked toward Jack as if asking for him to stand tall. The elder listened, frowning, but didn't interrupt. Then Lyra held out something from her pouch, a small tooth, long and sharp, with black blood still on it. Gasps went through the crowd. The elder took the tooth gently, examined it, and his face grew pale. He turned to the crowd and shouted. A few words, and the spears slowly lowered. Jack could finally breathe again. Lyra walked back to him, tired but smiling weakly. "You safe now?" she said. "What just happened?" Jack asked, confused. She pointed to the tooth from the beast. "Proof. I wounded it. With your help." Jack looked around, still feeling all eyes on him. Then she said something that surprised him. "My tribe hate humans," she whispered. "Long ago, humans came, many died, fear stayed." Jack nodded slowly. "And you trusted me anyway." She looked away shyly. "I saw. Not like others." Then the elder spoke again, and this time Lyra translated. He says, "If you really want to help us, you must see what we fight." The crowd parted, and Jack followed Lyra to a wall made of thick vines. Behind it, hidden, were the bones of warriors, some small, some huge, all broken in horrible ways. There were scratches deep in stone, and claw marks across shields made of metal. Jack stared in silence, heart heavy. "This beast," Lyra said quietly, "it comes every few moons, only at night, never leaves tracks, never shows weakness. Why? Doesn't it attack all at once?" Jack asked. Lyra looked at him with sad eyes. "It plays." Jack clenched his fists. If this thing played with its victims, then it wasn't just a wild animal, it was something worse. He turned back to the elder. "I'll help," he said. Firmly, Lyra translated, and the elder gave a slow nod. That night, they let Jack stay in a small hut near the fire. But no one else spoke to him. Only Lyra brought him food, a soup with strange roots and glowing herbs. As the fire cracked and the wind howled through the trees, Jack stared at the stars above. He came here to study nature, not fight monsters. But now he was part of something much deeper. The village had accepted him, barely, but the jungle still held its secrets, and somewhere out there, the beast waited, watching, listening, and maybe planning its next move. The night was too quiet, like even the stars were holding their breath. Jack sat by the small fire outside his hut, sharpening the short blade he had brought from his ship. The villagers had gone to sleep early, locking their doors, pulling thick blankets over their windows. No one laughed, no one sang, and no one dared to step outside. Only Lyra stayed awake. Sitting beside Jack, her tiny frame wrapped in fur, eyes locked on the dark, she didn't speak for a long time, just stared at the trees beyond the firelight. Finally, she whispered, "It comes tonight." Jack glanced at her, unsure how she knew. "How do you know?" he asked, voice low. She pointed to her chest. I feel it. Same feeling before it took my brother. Jack nodded slowly, the fire casting shadows across his face. He tightened the straps on his boots, checked the traps they had placed earlier. Simple things, ropes, spikes, nets, but it was all they had. Lyra reached into her bag and handed him a thick bone charm tied with string. For courage, she said softly. My mother gave me this. Before the beast took her, Jack took it gently, nodding his thanks, and tied it to his wrist. Then the wind shifted and the jungle went dead silent. No birds, no insects, not even the creak of trees. Lyra stood slowly, her eyes wide. It's here, she whispered. Jack grabbed his blade and stood too. Scanning the darkness, he could feel it, like something heavy pressing down on the world. Then crash, a distant hut burst open with a roar. Screams followed, loud and raw. Jack sprinted toward the sound without thinking, Lyra running behind him. They reached the edge of the village and saw a hut completely crushed. Wooden walls broken like paper. Blood was on the leaves. And in the middle of the mess, nothing. Just silence again. Jack stepped forward carefully, holding his blade ready. Then he saw it glowing yellow eyes in the trees above. They blinked once, then leaped. The beast landed hard on the ground, sending dust flying. It was huge, twice Jack's size, with 6 legs, long claws, and armored skin like stone. Its mouth opened wide, showing teeth stained with blood. Jack didn't wait. He ran forward, shouting, slashing with the knife. The blade scraped against the beast's hide like it was hitting metal. The creature backhanded him with one arm, sending him flying through the air. He hit the ground hard. Rolling into a bush, gasping for breath, Lyra screamed his name, but Jack pushed himself up. Bloody and dizzy, the beast charged him again. And Jack rolled out of the way at the last second. He stabbed upward, landing a hit on its underbelly, a softer spot. The beast roared, spinning around, now furious. Lyra threw a rock at it, trying to distract it. The creature turned toward her, eyes glowing brighter. No. Jack shouted, limping forward. He picked up a burning stick from the ground and waved it at the beast. The flames made it pause, snarling. Jack jabbed the fire forward, forcing it back step by step. The creature snarled, but didn't strike it. Watched him, thinking, calculating. Then, with a deep growl, it turned and ran back into the jungle, vanishing into the darkness. The silence returned, broken only by the sound of Jack's ragged breathing. Lyra rushed to his side, helping him. Stand, you scared it? She said in shock. Jack shook his head. No. It let me live. They walked back to the fire slowly, the villagers peeking out from their huts, whispering. The elder came forward, his face unreadable. Lyra spoke quickly in her language, pointing to the claw marks in the dirt, the blood, and Jack's bruises. The elder looked at Jack and gave a short nod, not friendly, but no longer hateful. That night, Jack sat beside the fire with Lyra again. Both silent, both shaken. He had faced the beast and survived, but it wasn't over. The creature had looked him in the eye and walked away. It could have killed him, but it didn't. That meant something, something worse, and Jack knew deep in his bones. It would return. The next morning, Jack woke up with pain in his ribs and bruises on his arms. The village was already moving, quietly repairing the broken hut, burning leaves and washing blood from the ground. No one cheered, no one smiled. But they no longer looked at Jack like a curse. Some even nodded at him with respect, just once, before turning away. He didn't need their thanks. He hadn't won anything yet. He had only survived, barely. Lyra brought him a bowl of warm root broth, kneeling beside him without a word. He looked at her and saw the same thing he felt: fire. The beast had attacked her people, had taken her family, and nearly taken her life. She wasn't going to sit and wait anymore. I want to learn, she said, quietly, but firmly. Jack raised an eyebrow. Learn what? She pointed to his knife, then to the rope traps he'd built days earlier. Your way, she said. Your human fight. He stared at her for a moment, then nodded slowly. They began that day. In a clearing beyond the village, under thick trees, Jack showed her how to hold a blade, how to move her feet, how to stay low and strike fast. She copied every move, sometimes falling, sometimes hitting herself with her own weapon, but she never complained, never gave up. When the sun went down, she kept going, even when her hands bled. Jack wrapped her fingers in cloth, shaking his head. You don't have to prove anything, he told her. But Lyra looked up at him, eyes filled with something fierce and deep. It took my mother, she said, then my brother, then my father. She clenched her fists. I am small, but I still have teeth. The next morning she came to him early, ready to train again. Word spread in the village. Some watched from behind trees, others whispered her name with awe. No girl had ever trained like a warrior, not like this. But Jack didn't treat her like a child, he treated her like a fighter. He taught her how to use the jungle, how to build traps from vines, how to move silently, how to think 2 steps ahead. She taught him her language, her people's hunting signals, and how to hear things most humans would miss. They grew stronger together. Every day, Jack's wounds healed, and Lyra's movements grew faster, sharper. One night, after training, she sat beside him. Watching the fire, she handed him a bracelet made of carved bone and dried leaves. For you, she said. From me? Jack smiled and slipped it on. Surprised at how carefully it was made, she blushed, just a little, and turned away. But that night, Jack heard quiet crying outside his hut. He stepped out and found Lyra kneeling by the tree line, staring into the dark. She didn't notice him at first. When she did, she wiped her face quickly. I dreamed of him, she whispered. My father. He told me to run, but I didn't listen. Jack sat beside her in silence, then placed a hand on her shoulder. You didn't run, he said softly. That's why I followed you. She didn't say anything, but she leaned her head against his arm, just for a moment. The next day, they scouted deep into the jungle. Searching for signs of the beast, they found claw marks on trees, droppings filled with bone fragments, and a half-eaten carcass of a jungle deer. Jack marked the area and built new traps, larger ones, smarter ones. Lyra helped him lift stones, tie vines, dig pits, and set lures. Each trap had a plan, a backup, and a signal flare made from local chemicals that would explode in color if triggered. But they both knew it still might not be enough. That night, the wind was too still again. Jack sat by the fire, sharpening 2 blades, now one for him, one for her. Lyra approached and took her blade silently, nodding. They didn't need words. Tomorrow, they would set the final trap deeper in the jungle, closer to the lair. They were ready, or at least as ready as 2 souls could be against a monster. Neither of them said goodnight, because deep down, they both feared one of them might not see the next sunset. The sun rose slow and red over the jungle, as if the sky already knew what was coming. Jack and Lyra stood side by side, staring into the misty trees ahead. Today was the day they would face the beast again. They had worked all night, preparing their most dangerous trap yet, a pit hidden with fresh leaves, sharp wooden spikes at the bottom, and bait soaked in blood above the pit. They hung a dead jungle deer, tied by vines, swaying in the wind. It looked real, it looked tempting. Around the area they placed alarm lines, flares, and signal stones. Jack checked everything twice. Lyra checked it a 3rd time. This had to work. They climbed into a high tree across from the trap and waited in silence. Hours passed, the sun rose higher, then dipped lower. The jungle breathed slowly. unaware of the war that was about to begin. Jack leaned his head back, eyes half closed, listening for anything strange. Then snap, the vines moved, the bait shifted, something heavy brushed the bushes below. Lyra reached out and touched his arm, her fingers shaking. Jack didn't blink. He nodded once and gripped the rope that would trigger the flare. Another step, then another, and then they saw it just a glimpse. Huge, black, silent. Moving like shadow through green, the beast stepped into the trap zone, nose sniffing, yellow eyes scanning. It moved forward, slowly, as if curious. Closer. Closer. One more step and crack. The ground gave way. The leaves collapsed, and the beast fell in. The flare exploded in red smoke and fire, lighting up the jungle. The tribe's warriors began to shout from far behind. Running toward the signal, Jack leaped from the tree, sliding down and sprinting toward the trap. Lyra followed close behind, blade drawn, face fierce. They reached the edge of the pit and looked down. The beast wasn't moving, it was still. Pierced by two spikes, smoke curling around its body, Jack exhaled. Lowering his knife, "We did it," he whispered. "We actually did it." But then, Lee's eyes opened, slowly, like waking from a nap. Then it moved, twisting with strength no trap could hold. Wood-shattered smoke burst upward. And the creature climbed out of the pit, roaring with fury. Jack stepped back. Stunned. "No," he said. "That should have killed it." The beast lunged too fast to react. Jack was knocked backward, hitting a tree hard, his vision blurred, the world spinning. He saw Lyra standing there, frozen for half a second. Then, rushing forward, she screamed, slashing with her blade. Cutting across the beast's face, blood flew, dark and steaming. The creature roared and grabbed her Lyra. Jack shouted, forcing himself to stand. He ran. But the beast turned and disappeared into the jungle with her in its arms. Gone, just like that. The smoke faded, the trap ruined. The jungle fell silent again. Jack stood alone, shaking the knife. Still in his hand, his body aching, the warriors arrived minutes later. Too late, too slow. They found Jack kneeling by the pit, staring at the broken vines and blood on the ground. "She's gone," he said quietly. The elder looked at him, face pale. "Then she is dead," he said softly. Jack stood up, his eyes hard. "No," he said, "she's not dead." The elder shook his head. "No one comes back from that place." But Jack didn't listen. He walked to his hut, pulled out his survival pack, filled it with tools, rope, fire starters, and medicine. He took Lyra's bone bracelet and tied it to his belt. Then he walked to the edge of the village, where the jungle waited, dark and wide. The elder called out, "Where are you going?" Jack didn't look back. "To bring her home," he said. Then he walked into the shadows. Alone, behind him, the tribe watched in silence. Some believed he would die before sunset. Others whispered that he was mad, but one girl in the crowd whispered, "He's not like the others." The jungle closed around him, thick and wild. Jack didn't care about the danger anymore. He didn't care about fear, or pain, or death. Lyra had believed in his strength, and now he would prove her right, even if it killed him. The jungle grew darker the deeper Jack went. It felt colder, too. Though there was no wind, the trees stood tall and twisted, as if shaped by something ancient and cruel. He moved fast but careful, eyes scanning every shadow, ears tuned to every broken twig. He didn't sleep, didn't stop, didn't rest. He only moved. Everywhere he walked, he looked for signs: broken branches, blood trails, claw marks. And he found them, fresh ones. The beast was close. And so was Lyra. 2 days passed, maybe more. Jack lost count. He followed strange paths through thick roots and alien fog, till he saw bones, hundreds of them, a clearing full of shattered skulls and cracked armor. Some bones were fresh, some decades old. This was the beast's lair. Jack crouched behind a thick tree, his hand gripping the blade. He waited, listening. No growl, no movement. He crept closer, heart pounding. Then he heard it breathing. Faint but real. He followed the sound to a dark corner behind a pile of rocks. And there she was, Lyra, alive, chained to a thick root wall, her head slumped forward, her arms bound. "Lyra," Jack whispered. Rushing forward, her head lifted. Slowly, her eyes dull but still burning with life. "Jack," she whispered, a tear rolling down her cheek. He cut the vines quickly, helping her sit up. "I thought I lost you," he said, voice shaking. "I'm not alone," she whispered. "Others?" Here, Jack turned and saw them. More figures, hidden in the shadows. 3 other captives, 2 male aliens, and 1 human explorer he'd never seen before. All were thin, weak eyes, full of terror. "They were taken to," Lyra said. "Some long ago, some recently." Jack moved fast, cutting the others free, handing out water and medicine. One of the aliens could barely speak. "It feeds on fear," he said. "It plays. Makes us scream." Jack clenched his jaw, his fists shaking. The beast wasn't just a predator, was a sadist. Then came the noise, a deep rumble from underground. The captives froze, their faces going pale. "It's coming back," Lyra said, gripping Jack's arm. He helped her stand and passed her a small blade. "We fight together," he said. "No," she replied. "We finish this together." They moved fast, hiding the other captives in the rocks, setting small traps along the entrance. Then Jack and Lyra took position, he with his blade, she with a sharpened spear made from broken bone. The air thickened, the beast stepped into the clearing. Larger than before, its back scarred from the last battle, its eyes locked on Jack. Then on Lyra, it roared, and the jungle shook. Jack didn't flinch. Lyra didn't move. They charged together. Jack dodged a swipe and stabbed upward. Slicing the beast's shoulder, Lyra leapt and jabbed her spear into its side, then rolled away before it could grab her. The beast howled. Furious, striking trees, smashing traps, one exploded with fire and light, burning its leg. The creature turned on Jack, slamming him into a rock. Pain shot through his ribs. But he held his knife and drove it into the beast's mouth as it roared. Over him, it screeched and threw him off. Lyra jumped onto its back, stabbing again and again. The beast bucked wildly, crashing into trees. Jack forced himself up, bleeding but alive. He saw Lyra being thrown into the mud and rushed to her, pulling her out just before the beast's claw hit the ground. Together, they dove behind a fallen log, breathing hard. Then Jack pulled out his final weapon, a firestone charged with high energy. "Plasma Lyra," he said. "We end this now." She nodded. Eyes fierce, they ran together. Jack tossed the stone high. Lyra struck it mid-air with her spear. It exploded in a wave of white flame right in the beast's face. The creature screamed, spinning wildly, crashing into trees and rocks. Then it fell, shaking, twitching, and finally, still, smoke rose into the sky. Birds flew from the trees. And the jungle sighed. It was over. Jack dropped to his knees, coughing. Lyra stood beside him, covered in blood and ash. But alive, they walked back into the beast's lair, helped the others stand one by one. They limped out of the cursed place. As the sun rose over the trees, Jack looked at Lyra. "You saved them," he said. She looked at him and whispered, "We saved each other." The sun was rising when they reached the edge of the village. Jack carried one of the rescued aliens on his back, and Lyra walked beside him, blood on her arms, dirt on her face, but her steps were strong. Behind them came the others, limping, silent but alive as they stepped out of the jungle. The villagers gasped, mothers cried, warriors stood in silence. Children ran forward but stopped when they saw what Lyra carried, the beast's severed head hanging from a thick vine. Dark blood still dripping from its mouth. She dropped it in the center of the village square. No words, just proof. Then she raised her eyes, tired but bright. And the village dropped to their knees. Even the elder bowed his head. They chanted. In their language, soft and powerful, Sarth of Valor, they called her Beast Slayer. But Lyra didn't smile, didn't speak. Instead, she turned to Jack. And in a quiet voice that everyone still heard, she said, "He saved me." The crowd turned their eyes to Jack. Some looked confused, others unsure. "No," the elder said. Stepping forward, "You returned. You carried the head. You carry." The title, Lyra shook her head. "I was only alive because he came." She looked at Jack, her voice stronger now. "I begged for his strength, and he gave it." Jack felt the heat rise in his chest, but he stayed quiet. The elder looked at Jack again, this time not with fear, not with anger, but something. Deeper respect. He raised his staff, pointing to both of them. "Then both shall be honored." He declared, that night, the village lit the largest fire Jack had ever seen. They cooked, they sang, they danced something they hadn't done in seasons. Because fear had ruled them for too long, and now that fear had a broken skull on the ground, Jack sat near the flames, his ribs wrapped, his arms bandaged. Lyra sat beside him, holding a warm bowl of food. She didn't say much, just leaned, her head gently against his shoulder. It was the first time she looked truly at peace. Later that night, as the stars blinked above them, the elder came and sat across from them. "You could have left," he said to Jack. "After the first attack, you could have walked away." Jack stared into the fire. "I thought about it," he admitted. "But she didn't run," he added, nodding toward Lyra. "So neither did I." The elder nodded slowly. "Then maybe it is time our people stop running too." He placed something between them, carved stone pendant, shaped like the beast's claw, but broken at the tip. "A reminder," the elder said, "that courage does not come from size or strength, but from choice." Jack looked at the pendant, then at Lyra. She smiled softly. "You still owe me a lesson?" Jack chuckled. "On what?" She pointed to his knife. "The spin move?" They both laughed for the first time in days. But the peace wasn't just in the laughter, was in the silence that followed. In the stillness of the jungle, no longer filled with fear. A few days later, Jack prepared to leave. His mission had been completed. But he had gained something far beyond data before he stepped onto a small shuttle. Lyra walked up to him, holding something wrapped in soft leather. He opened it slowly. Inside was her first spear, the broken one, now repaired and carved. "With symbols for you," she said. "So you don't forget." Jack looked at her and smiled. "I couldn't forget if I tried." Then, to his surprise, she stepped forward and hugged him tightly. "I'm still small," she said into his chest. "But now I know I can fight." He hugged her back gently. "You are always strong, Lyra." As the shuttle door closed and Jack lifted off, he looked down at the village. The people had gathered in the center. Waving, Lyra stood in front, her hand raised high. He didn't know what the future would bring. But he knew this: he hadn't just helped her survive. He had watched her become something greater, a leader, a symbol, a legend. And in return, she had reminded him why humans were feared, respected, and sometimes followed, not because of weapons or ships or size, but because, when someone begged for help, they said yes. The stars above the human station were colder than the jungle sky. Everything was clean, metallic, controlled. No wild roots, no glowing bugs, no whispering trees. But Jack couldn't sleep. He sat alone in the quiet observatory, staring out the wide glass window. The jungle was far behind now, left on a green moon rotating peacefully below. But something about it wouldn't leave him. He still felt the weight of the beast's roar. Still heard Lyra's voice in his head, the way she had whispered, "Please, I need your strength." And then, later, we saved each other. He held her spear in his hands, now her repaired one, the one she had gifted him. It wasn't just a weapon anymore. It was a story, a memory, a promise. A soft knock came. At the door, Jack turned, expecting an officer or tech worker. But it was a woman from the science team, holding a file pad. "You're not filing your return report?" she asked gently. Jack smiled a little. "I will," he said. "Just—" "Not yet." She paused, then nodded and left him alone again. He stared back out the window, down on the green moon. The jungle was alive without the fear that once ruled it. He had made a difference, but something inside him whispered it wasn't finished. The next day, he gave his report, clean and professional. No mention of the girl with the bone-painted skin. No mention of the look in her eyes when she held his hand. No mention of the nights beside the fire where they trained, bled and laughed. Just the facts: predator neutralized, local tribe recovered, safety reestablished. But before leaving the debriefing room, he slipped something onto the desk. A data chip labeled Zartha, the tiny Huntress. Then he walked out without another word. 3 months passed. He took other missions, visited other planets, met new species. But every time he saw a dense forest or heard a low growl in the dark, he thought of her, until one night. Alone in his quarters, his comm screen flashed. Incoming. Transmission. The message was encrypted and marked from an unknown frontier relay. Jack opened it. At first, there was only static. Then a faint image, blurry, green-tinted. Then her face appeared. Lyra. Older now, stronger, but unmistakably her. "Jack," she said, her voice clear. "The jungle misses you." Jack leaned forward, heart racing. She continued. "I built a school, like you said. Train the small ones, the quiet ones. The ones who are told they are too weak." She smiled. "They call it the circle of teeth." "In your honor," Jack laughed softly, emotions swelling in his chest. "I tell them stories," she said, "of the man who said yes when I begged. Of the man who didn't run from fear. Of the man who taught me to fight, not like a warrior, but like a human." Jack didn't speak, just listened. Then her voice lowered. "I kept the fire going. Beside the old tree where we trained," she said. "In case you return." The screen flickered. And then the message ended. Jack sat there for a long time. Then he stood, walked to his locker, and opened it. Inside was a bag already packed. As if part of him had been waiting, he slung it over his shoulder, clipped Lyra's spear to his side, and walked toward the hangar. No mission orders, no request, no backup, just him. Just a promise, and somewhere down there beneath the stars, beneath the trees, a tiny Huntress waiting beside a fire, still believing in the strength of a human who once said yes.